Clint Eastwood once shrugged that a movie is just a movie. But the true story behind Heartbreak Ridge is stranger than anything on screen. Today on Rewatch Club, 21 weird facts about the 1986 war classic, plus one bonus fact so bizarre it turns a credit card into an airstrike. Banned premieres, buried subplots, hidden secrets. Let's rewatch history. Number 1. The ridge that gave the film its name. Before it was an Eastwood movie, Heartbreak Ridge was a real place soaked in blood. The title comes from a brutal Korean War battle fought over roughly a month in the autumn of 1951 in the mountains of Korea, where thousands of men fell over a few miserable ridgelines. In the film, Gunnery Sergeant Tom Highway isn't just a grizzled hard case, he's a Medal of Honor recipient who earned the nation's highest award in that very fight.
And it stars Eastwood as a gunnery sergeant named Tom Highway, who was a tough career U.S. Marine nearing his retirement age.
That single detail quietly powers the whole story. Every young Marine who mocks him, every officer who dismisses him as a relic, is standing in front of a living legend and doesn't know it yet. The nostalgia hits hard once you realize the title is a tombstone. Number 2. The Army said no first. Here's something most fans never learned. Highway was never supposed to be a Marine. Screenwriter James Karabatsos, himself a Vietnam veteran, originally wrote the character as a career Army sergeant, and Eastwood asked his producer to approach the U.S. Army about filming at Fort Bragg. The Army read the script and flatly refused to help. They objected to Highway being a hard-drinking, divorced throwback who motivated his men with unapproved methods, calling the character a stereotype of attitudes they insisted no longer existed. Eastwood personally pleaded his case to an Army general, arguing there were old-school values worth honoring. It didn't work. So Eastwood simply picked up the phone, called the Marine Corps instead, and rewrote his hero into a leatherneck. One rejection changed the entire uniform. Number 3. The movie was made by a sitting mayor. While Eastwood was barking orders on set, he was also running an actual town. In April 1986, right as this film was coming together, he was elected mayor of the tiny coastal village of Carmel by the Sea, California, winning in a landslide with more than 2,000 votes. Heartbreak Ridge became the first of 3 films he made during his single 2-year term. Picture it.
Heartbreak Ridge is not going to surprise a lot of Clint Eastwood fans, but it's not going to disappoint them either.
The man is directing a war movie, starring in it, producing it, and still driving back to chair city council meetings about zoning laws and, famously, an old ban on selling ice cream. Few directors have ever juggled a film shoot and a mayor's office at the same time. Reportedly, even fellow actor-turned-politician Ronald Reagan phoned in his congratulations from the White House after the election. Eastwood did both jobs at once and still finished the movie ahead of schedule. Number 4. The Marines quietly walked away. The Marine Corps first said yes, opening up Camp Pendleton for filming and even hoping to tie the movie to its Toys for Tots charity drive. Then they saw a cut of it and disowned it. A Marine spokesman publicly objected to the sheer volume of profanity, pointing out that real drill instructors aren't even permitted by regulation to swear at recruits the way Highway does. But the deeper problem was a single scene. Eastwood's character shoots a wounded Cuban soldier in the back, an act that would legally constitute a war crime. The Corps had cooperated for months, then reversed course within weeks of release. A film built with military help ended up rejected by the very branch it was meant to celebrate. Number 5. The line added to protect the Army's honor. This is a gloriously petty piece of movie history. When word got out that a Marine would be the hero of Heartbreak Ridge, actual U.S. Army veterans of the real 1951 battle were reportedly furious because the battle had been primarily an Army fight, with only a handful of Marines involved indirectly.
The only thing really new this time is that the battle scenes at the end are in Grenada. We haven't seen that war on the screen before.
To smooth it over, Eastwood recorded a brand new line of dialogue explaining that Highway had actually served in the Army during the Korean War and only joined the Corps later. In the finished film, that explanation is delivered by his old friend Sergeant Major Chuzu. An entire line was written and inserted for the sole purpose of making sure the Army, not the Marines, got credit for the famous ridge. Number 6. The Beirut chapter that vanished. The original screenplay had a darker, more haunting setup. Highway's squad was supposed to be diverted to Grenada after first being sent to Lebanon to replace Marines killed in the real 1983 Beirut barracks bombing, one of the deadliest days in modern Marine history. It was historically accurate and emotionally devastating, but the Defense Department reportedly wanted that plot thread removed entirely. Eastwood resisted, then eventually gave in and accepted a rewrite, though he didn't hide his frustration. He described the decision as essentially altering history and said he was sure the families of those killed in Beirut wouldn't appreciate having that chapter erased. A more somber version of this film once existed on paper, and the politics of the moment quietly deleted it. Number 7. When a charity got caught in the crossfire. The fallout went further than bad press. Because the Pentagon soured on the film, it reportedly instructed the Corps to pull back from any charity screenings tied to it. including Toys for Tots, the Christmas toy drive that Eastwood himself served as national chairman for. A local armed forces YMCA near San Diego had already spent thousands of dollars preparing a benefit premiere and suddenly had to cancel it. But here's the warm twist fans love. Rather than let the charity eat the loss, Eastwood, Warner Brothers, and the theater chain reportedly stepped in and staged their own benefit screening, funneling the proceeds right back to the YMCA. It was a small act of stubborn generosity in the middle of an ugly public spat. A movie the military abandoned still managed to raise money for kids at Christmas. Number 8. Clint Eastwood, secret songwriter. Everyone knows Eastwood directs, acts, and produces. Fewer people know he writes music. Tucked into this film's soundtrack is a song called How Much I Care, and the writing credit belongs to Clint Eastwood alongside the legendary lyricist Sammy Cahn, the same Sammy Cahn who won multiple Oscars for his songs. Eastwood has long been a serious jazz lover and pianist, and over the years, he's quietly composed themes for several of his own films. Heartbreak Ridge is one of the early places that hidden talent surfaces. So the next time someone tells you Eastwood is just a tough guy actor, remind them the man co-wrote a romantic ballad for a movie about the invasion of Grenada. The gunslinger has a soft, melodic side. Number 9. Mario Van Peebles scored his own scenes. Mario Van Peebles doesn't just play Stitch Jones, the wannabe rock star stuck in the Corps. He actually wrote the music his character performs. Van Peebles penned tracks with playful titles like Recon Rap and Bionic Marine, and co-wrote another song for the film as well. It's a rare case of an actor essentially building his character's entire musical identity from scratch. His performance and creative contribution were strong enough that he took home an NAACP Image Award for the role. The son of pioneering filmmaker Melvin Van Peebles, Mario turned what could have been a throwaway comic relief part into the movie's beating pop culture heart. Every time Stitch grabs a guitar on screen, you're hearing the actor's own songwriting, not a studio ghostwriter's. Number 10. The Men Who Really Rescued the Students. The film's big emotional payoff is Highway's platoon storming in to save trapped American medical students during the Grenada invasion. In reality, it wasn't Marines who pulled that off. It was largely U.S. Army Rangers who secured the medical school campus and got the students out. The movie hands the Marines the glory for dramatic reasons, quietly rewriting who did what. It's a reminder that even based on real events, war films shape history to fit their hero.
The plot of Heartbreak Ridge is not exactly original. We've seen the tough drill sergeant before, and we've seen the green recruits in a lot of other movies.
And speaking of heroes, if you're enjoying these, do me a fast favor. Smash that like button, drop a comment, and subscribe to RewatchClub. We've already gone deep on war classics like The Sea Wolves, A Bridge Too Far, and The Dogs of War. Tell me down below which one was your favorite, and whether you want us to cover another war movie next. Number 11, A Bulldozer and a Future 4-Star General. One of the movie's oddest images, a Marine using a bulldozer as improvised cover to advance under fire, isn't pure Hollywood invention. It's reportedly based on a real moment during the Grenada invasion, and the officer connected to that real-life event went on to become one of the most powerful commanders in the entire U.S. military. John Abizaid, a man who would eventually earn 4 stars and lead U.S. Central Command, overseeing American forces across the Middle East. So, a goofy-looking bulldozer charge that plays almost like comedy on screen has its roots in an incident tied to a genuine future general. It's the kind of stranger-than-fiction detail that makes Heartbreak Ridge worth a second look. And trust me, the weirdest true story is still coming as our bonus fact. Number 12, the gaffer who became Eastwood's eye. Watch the lighting crew on this film, and you'll spot a name that means nothing in 1986 and everything later. Tom Stern. On Heartbreak Ridge, Stern was the gaffer, the person in charge of lighting, several rungs below the top camera job. He'd been quietly working his way up through Eastwood's crew for years. Then, decades later, he was promoted into the director of photography chair and became Eastwood's go-to cinematographer, shooting era-defining films like Mystic River, $1 Million Baby, Letters from Iwo Jima, Gran Torino, and American Sniper. Some of the most beautiful frames in modern Eastwood cinema come from a man who was once just adjusting the lights on this movie. Loyalty inside the Malpaso camp ran deep, and Heartbreak Ridge was one more rung on that ladder. Number 13, a longtime camera operator's big break. Tom Stern wasn't the only crew member climbing the ladder here. Heartbreak Ridge was also the very first film credited to cinematographer Jack N. Green as director of photography. Green had spent years inside Eastwood's world as a camera operator, going all the way back to serving as an assistant aerial cameraman on Eastwood's directorial debut in the early 1970s. He'd operated the A camera on nearly a dozen Eastwood pictures before finally being handed the top job on this one. He'd go on to shoot many more Eastwood classics after this. So, this movie is a hidden turning point, the moment a trusted right-hand man stepped up and became the eye of the camera. Eastwood had a habit of rewarding patience, and Green's patience paid off right here. Number 14, the 1000th film of its kind. Here's a piece of pure movie history trivia that almost nobody knows. Heartbreak Ridge holds a very specific technical distinction. It was reportedly the 1,000th film ever recorded with a Dolby stereo soundtrack. Think about that milestone for a second. Dolby's sound technology had reshaped how movies were heard in theaters through the late 1970s and 1980s, and this Eastwood war drama happened to land on that round 1,000th marker. By the mid-1980s, Dolby had already become the gold standard for how movies were mixed and heard in theaters. It's a strangely fitting footnote, given that sound would become the film's most talked-about feature for both good and bad reasons. A movie that got in trouble for what its characters said out loud also earned a quiet place in the record books for how it delivered that sound to your ears. Number 15. An Oscar nod for all that noise. For all the controversy over its language, Heartbreak Ridge earned exactly one Academy Award nomination, and it was for Best Sound. Sit with that irony for a moment. The Marine Corps reportedly walked away partly because of the film's relentless, salty, barracks-grade dialogue. The Pentagon grumbled, and yet the film's audio work was polished enough that Hollywood's own Academy singled it out for its highest honor in the sound category. The very thing that got the movie in trouble with the military is the thing that nearly won it an Oscar. It didn't take the trophy home, but the nomination alone is a delicious twist. Sometimes the loudest, roughest movie in the room is also the best engineered one, and the industry noticed. Number 16, a resume forged in 3 wars. Tom Highway isn't just any old soldier. The film quietly gives him one of the most staggering combat resumes imaginable.
Highway is not your ideal Marine. He gets in a lot of trouble, and the movie opens with him in a drunk tank.
According to the story, he's a veteran of the Korean War, the 1965 American intervention in the Dominican Republic, and 3 separate tours of duty in Vietnam. That's essentially a walking timeline of Cold War-era American conflict packed into one weathered, growling man. It explains so much about the character. The exhaustion, the drinking, the sense that the modern world has left him behind. Every scar and every hard-earned lesson comes from somewhere real in the fictional timeline. When Highway looks at his fresh young recruits with tired contempt, it's because he survived more history than they've read about. Few war movie heroes carry a backstory this heavy on their shoulders. Number 17. The AK-47 alarm clock. One of the film's most memorable training moments is also one of the reasons the military reportedly winced. To toughen up his soft platoon, Highway fires live rounds from an AK-47 over their heads while they're on the ground, forcing them to memorize the distinct sound of the enemy's favorite rifle. The idea is chilling and practical at once. In real combat, knowing that sound could save your life. But as a training method, it's wildly unorthodox and exactly the sort of thing that fed criticism about how the film portrayed military discipline. It's pure Highway, brutal, effective, and completely against the rulebook. Fans remember the scene vividly because it perfectly captures a man who teaches survival the only way he knows how, by scaring it into you. Number 18. Second place behind a starship. When Heartbreak Ridge marched into theaters in December 1986, it ran straight into a pop culture juggernaut. It opened in second place at the box office, beaten to the number 1 spot by Star Trek IV, The Voyage Home, the beloved one with the whales. Despite all the military controversy swirling around it, Eastwood's war drama still pulled in strong crowds, going on to earn well over $100 million worldwide and ranking among the top 20 films of its year. Not bad for a movie the Pentagon publicly distanced itself from just days before release. Eastwood's star power simply overrode the bad headlines. Audiences didn't care about the politics behind the scenes. They showed up to watch Clint bark, brawl, and lead one more time. Controversy be damned. Number 19. What Roger Ebert really thought. Critics were genuinely split on this one, which makes the reactions fun to revisit. The legendary Roger Ebert handed the film 3 stars and praised its energy, singling out what he called truly amazing dialogue, the same rough talk the military hated. Other reviewers were far cooler, dismissing the story as thin or the ending as unsatisfying. Over time, the film has settled into a mixed to positive reputation, the kind of movie that critics respect for Eastwood's performance even when they shrug at the plot. That divide is part of its charm. It's not a flawless film, and it never pretended to be. It's a rough, funny, cigar-chewing character study wrapped in a war movie, and decades later, people still argue about exactly how good it actually is. Number 20, wrapped a full week early. Clint Eastwood has a near-mythical reputation in Hollywood for running fast, lean, efficient sets, and Heartbreak Ridge is a textbook example.
But Heartbreak Ridge really worked for me, partly because of the amazingly colorful language in the screenplay, and it is salty and R-rated.
Production reportedly wrapped in the summer of 1986, a full 7 days ahead of schedule. In an industry famous for blown deadlines, ballooning budgets, and endless reshoots, finishing a war film a week early is almost unheard of. It speaks to Eastwood's whole directing philosophy. Hire people he trusts, shoot quickly, avoid needless takes, and respect everyone's time. That discipline is exactly why crew members stayed loyal to him for decades. And remember, he pulled this off while simultaneously serving as a small-town mayor. The efficiency wasn't just a nice bonus, it was practically a necessity for a man wearing that many hats at once. Fast, focused, and done. Number 21. The 3 words that outlived the film. Ask people to name a phrase from Heartbreak Ridge, and many will land on the same rugged mantra: improvise, adapt, and overcome. The film is widely credited with popularizing that phrase, which has since been embraced almost like an unofficial motto by Marines and adopted far beyond the military, showing up in speeches, gyms, business books, and a million internet memes.
And Eastwood says things even the Marines may not have heard of before. I also like the movie because of its sheer energy.
It's become shorthand for grit and resourcefulness everywhere. Whether or not those exact words define real Marine doctrine, the movie is a huge reason they entered the cultural bloodstream. That's a wild legacy for a film the armed forces once tried to distance themselves from. The movie itself may be half forgotten by casual audiences, but its most famous line refuses to retire. And speaking of things that refuse to make sense, here's our bonus. #bonus fact. The credit card airstrike actually happened. The film's most jaw-dropping beat is when an officer, cut off in combat, uses an ordinary telephone and a credit card to place a long-distance call back to the United States and summon an airstrike. It sounds like a screenwriter's ridiculous joke. It isn't. That entire scene is reportedly based on a real event from the Grenada invasion, when American paratroopers, unable to reach fire support through military channels, allegedly used a commercial phone line and a calling card to ring up their home base in North Carolina and request backup. The screenwriter, a real combat veteran, reportedly built the movie around that very anecdote. So, the single most unbelievable moment in Heartbreak Ridge is arguably the most true to life. Sometimes the war stories nobody would believe are the ones that actually happened. Heartbreak Ridge endures as one of Eastwood's most fascinating oddities, a rough, funny, controversial war movie that fought nearly as hard off-screen as its hero did on it. Abandoned by the military, adored by audiences, and quietly stitched together by loyal collaborators, it's aged into a strange, lovable relic of the 1980s. If this trip down memory lane earned a salute, here's your mission. Like, comment, and subscribe. Because at Rewatch Club, we don't just watch the classics, we rewatch them until they confess their secrets. Which moment still gives you chills? And what movie should we dig into next? Drop your pick in the comments and fall in. We'll see you at the next screening.